And today we're going to be dealing with something called persuasion. You know that you write for several reasons. You can write to inform, you can write to share, you can write to entertain, but you can write to persuade. And persuasion is something that we do all the time, every day, since the day you were born. You came into this world kicking and screaming, and you were already persuading mom and dad to have your way. And that works for a while, I know. And then as you get older, you start accessing and using other devices, moping and the sad puppy eyes and a smile and a quivering lip and all these new tools that you gather in your arsenal to persuade others. And sometimes it works, sometimes it stops working. But the fact of the matter is that as long as we are alive, we're trying to persuade other human beings about whatever issue we're interested in because we're trying to get our way, right? The art of winning men's and women's minds using words is as old as humanity. And it is so old that it even captured the attention of very famous Greek philosophers such as Plato and Aristotle. And Aristotle even wrote a book called Rhetoric. That's how important it was for him. But it wasn't until last century that there was really an effort to scientifically describe the objective conditions under which persuasion works, whether it succeeds or fails. Persuasion guys, is a very important thing. And you have to understand how important it is by understanding the following thing. What is the most precious commodity today in the world? Andres, what do you think? What's a commodity, Andres? What do you understand by that?
Oh, wait, sorry. A commodity, I'd say, is something that makes your life more manageable or comfortable, so that you don't have certain obstacles in your way that you might have if you didn't have them.
Well, you're thinking in comfort. You're confusing the word with comfort because it sounds like comfort in Spanish. But a commodity is something of value. Gold, silver, diamonds, those are commodities. Uh, and until last year, the most important, valuable commodity in the world was oil or petroleum, as they call it in Europe. But last year, there is something that surpassed it.
The internet?
No, it's not the internet, but you know what? When you go into the internet, you're going to see something that is connected to that commodity.
Amazon.
Virtual money.
No, actually, your personal information. That's why when you turn on your computer or your phone, you'll see thousands of trackers that they're like flies. Virtually, they're like flies. And they're tracking every stroke of a key, every button that you press. Why? Because they want to know your habits so they can persuade you. You'll notice that you were probably interested in latest in sneaker fashion and you were looking around, and all of a sudden, the next day you turn on your phone or your computer, you see an advertisement precisely about sneakers, and you're wondering, but how did they know this? Why is this here? Had that ever happened to you?
Yeah.
It happens to
Couple
everybody.
times.
Why do you think they do that? Why do you think this happens?
Because they want to sell more of their product or service.
Exactly. And how can they do that? How can you get someone to buy the product or service that you're offering?
Well, look into what they're interested in,
But in
and
order
then
in order for them to persuade you, they have to persuade you, they need to know who you are, they need to know your habits. So you see how that brings us into persuasion. Persuasion is a very important thing, and it is something that we engage in every single day. What's persuasion? Persuasion is a form of social influence. The definition of persuasion is that it is the process of guiding oneself, yourself, or another person toward the adoption of an idea, an attitude, an action by rational and symbolic, though not always logical means. So, in other words, you're trying to convince yourself in order to carry out an action. You're trying to convince yourself about something or somebody else. Why would you try to convince yourself of something? Well, let's say that you don't like your weight, that you look at yourself in the mirror and you don't like what you're looking, and you wish you were like skinnier or maybe more muscular. So you start adopting the idea that, wait a minute, you know what? I need to get in a diet, or I need to begin exercising, or I need to do this, or I need that, or plastic surgery, or whatever comes to your mind. And in order for you to achieve that, you have to persuade yourself, you have to guide yourself through a process to adopt an idea, an attitude, or an action. Have you never done that? Convince yourself.
Yeah.
What about trying to convince others? Mom, let me go to the party. Huh? Or mom, buy me this. Or dad, get me that. And you give reasons. So dad or mom can adopt your idea or your attitude and take the action that you want. And you'll do whatever you can to get your way. That's what persuasion is all about, guys. It's about power, a power over other people. And in writing, we see a lot of persuasion. The fine art of persuasion takes many forms that we're going to be seeing today. There are basically two ways to appeal. The first way to appeal is to reason. Because, our name is Homo sapiens, right? We're supposed to be smart. We're supposed to be logical. We're supposed to be reasonable. So how do you appeal to people by reason? Well, you use logical arguments, you use logic, you use rhetoric, which is a very flowery way of communicating reason. You can use a scientific method. When you say to another person, when you say, see, I told you, see. In other words, you're telling them to observe and come to conclusions, which is what the scientific method is all about. It's all about observation, right? And proof. Here are the facts. Here are the evidence, right? So that would be an appeal to reason. But human beings, even though our name is Homo sapiens, which means the primate that knows, sometimes we don't know because we prefer to feel. So another way of appealing is by emotion. That one works a lot. And advertisement uses a lot of emotion, faith, presentation and imagination, propaganda, which we've been seeing a lot of lately, particularly in the United States, seduction, tradition, and pity. Pity me, pity me, pity me, right? So these two ways of appealing are used by people all over the world and by organizations to influence others into adopting ideas and attitudes and take action that will benefit them. So an example of that would be, how many of you have ever heard of St. Andrew's? No, I'm sorry, not St. Andrew's. It's St. Jude's Hospital, St. Jude's Children's Hospital. Have you seen those commercials on TV?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
what are the advertisements about?
About the
Children that are in the hospital,
experiences.
they're sick.
Well, it's about, they show you children with cancer. And when you see someone with cancer, that's a sad thing. But when you show a child with cancer, that's like triple sadder. In those commercials, do they show a doctor with a white coat with charts behind him telling you why it would be a good idea for you to give a contribution to the hospital? Is that what they show?
No.
No,
Mm.
because I mean, even that would be an appeal to reason, right? Like, here are the reasons why you should contribute to St. Jude's Hospital and blah 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 blah, and give you a bunch of logical reasons. But you think that would work?
No.
In this case, no. So they opted to go with the emotional side, like, like to destroy pull your heartstrings, right? To destroy you emotionally. You start seeing those babies like crying and all that, and you're like, oh my God, that poor baby. Let me send them some money. And then they put that sad music with a violin behind them. Oh my God, that destroys you. So appeals to emotion are very powerful. Now, what you should wonder is if appeals to emotion are as valid as appeals to reason. That when you start really thinking about it, which one holds more water? What do you think? Now, who says that you only have to appeal to one, right? I mean, when I make an appeal, I use all my arsenal, I use a combination of appeals to emotion and appeals to reason. But at the end of the day, reason will hold more water than emotion. Now, there are aids to persuasion. There are things that help you, like body language. Like when like when you're a little kid and mommy's at a doctor's office and you're like jumping up and down, chavando, and running around and not misbehaving, right? And mom assumes she crosses her legs and looks at you in a certain way, and she doesn't have to say a word, and that freezes you on your tracks. How many of you are familiar with that? Or when
Mhm.
mommy crosses her arms, huh? Or when daddy gets too close for comfort. All that is body language, and those things communicate. Those are aids to persuasion. Another aid to persuasion would be communication skills or rhetoric, which is talking nice, like Obama. Sales techniques, guys, sales technique that works. I remember when I used to work there was a time when I was a college student that I dropped out of college for a semester, and I was working before I went back to studying again. And during that time, I worked at a glass and aluminum warehouse. I was 19, and I earned very little money, but yeah, I had a job, I had a job. I was not like sitting down watching TV. I had a job. I was making money. But one day I was alone in the workshop, minding my own business, and this guy comes in. He was not a client. The guy was like very well dressed. He had a big fat smile in his face. He had a briefcase, and the guy starts talking very nicely, and he shakes my hand and looks me in the eye. And the guy was an insurance salesperson selling life insurance to a 19-year-old who had all his life in front of him. It was crazy. Usually that works with older people because they think I'm gonna die. I want to leave some money to my loved ones, but to a 19-year-old, and the guy's mouth was like a machine gun. It was a pa, 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 pa. It was like this, blah, 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 blah. At the end of the day, I was signing a sheet, taking the insurance, signing my name on a piece of paper and giving him money. And when the guy left, I was like, what just happened here? What did I just do? And of course, after that, when the guy came back for the next installment, I said, you know what? I'm dropping out of this because I didn't even let him talk. But sales technique, be aware of salespeople, especially those guys that are selling stuff at gas stations. You know who I'm talking about, right? You haven't seen these guys in the gas stations when your mom's gonna put gas in the car, and they go straight to her with a smile and a God bless you, and they have that spray that they put on the car that you don't need water and soap. and then the can is ridiculously expensive. So be aware of these people. There's also something called personality test and conflict style inventory, and there's another A to persuasion. Other techniques include deception. What is deception? Mr. Vargas, when you hear the word deception, what do you think that means?
It's not what meets the eye.
Can you repeat that again, please?
It's like it's not what meets the eye. Okay.
And when whatever doesn't meet the eye, does it mean it's true or is it not true?
Uh, I think it's not true, but it
Oh,
depends.
exactly. I agree with you, sir. It's not true. And when something is not true, what do we call that?
A
A
lie?
A
lie.
lie. So deception is lying, guys. Have you ever lied to your parents? And I know you're not going to answer. First of all, you don't like answering here, but you're not going to answer this one if your parents are around. But have you ever lied? Just think about it. Have you ever lied to get your way?
Yes.
And you know the answer, right? Of course. Of course. We all lie. Okay? Another technique is hypnosis. How many of you believe that hypnosis works? I had an experience with hypnosis. It does work. It's incredible. It's ridiculous. I'm a very skeptical person. Let me tell you something. I'm not the kind of guy that believes in the tooth fairy, and stuff like that. Okay. I think I'm a pretty reasonable and logically oriented person. And if I would have not had that experience, I would say, nah, I don't believe in that. Well, I do. I went to, many years ago, there was this televangelist called Benny Hinn, and he was coming to Puerto Rico, and my grandma, I'm sorry, not my grandma, my mother-in-law, my wife's mother wanted to see the guy. So my wife is telling me, Mom wants to see him, and I'm okay, I'll take her. But this guy is a scam artist, like most televangelists, and not all of them. And I know they put this big tent in Isabela, near La Urbanización Medina. So we went there, and we're in this big tent, and we're sitting there, and the guy is manipulating people, the audience, in such a way. I mean, the entire crowd. There was a moment where he asked everyone to stand up and hold their hands. So there I'm standing. Okay, here we go. Let me stand up and hold the people next to me. One of the people that was next to me at my left was my wife, and at my right was this old fat lady. And he was basically saying that he was going to count down, and that when he blew into the microphone after counting down from 10, that something would happen. And guys, the power of suggestion is so incredible. I mean, it was like, wait a minute, what's going on here? And he starts like 10, he's coming, 9, it's coming, it's gonna happen, 8, and he's exciting people in that. Well, by the time the guy went to 1, he blew into his microphone, and everybody fell down except a few people. Those people were me. I'm not going to fall down. My wife was standing, and my mother-in-law. But I almost was knocked down because the old fat lady I was holding. When I looked to my side, what I see are her legs popped up. Okay, her big fat legs. She was knocked down, chair and all. So almost, I would say that like 90% of the audience was floored. So hypnosis is a real thing, guys. Something else that is another technique is called subliminal advertising. Does anybody know what subliminal advertising is, or have you, even if you don't know, have you ever heard of it?
No.
Yes.
Ms. Recio, you said yes or no?
Yes.
Yes. Do you have any idea of what it is?
It's like a hidden message within an ad or another thing that's advertising within that.
Yeah, it's subliminal. The word subliminal means underliminal. It refers to a state of consciousness. You know, you can be conscious or unconscious, but there are states in between. That's what some people say. And they say that when you are attentive and you are like paying attention to what is your surroundings, your environment, you're in a liminal state. But that sometimes things happen that your brain registers, but not consciously, that you're not aware completely of what's going on. They call that a subliminal state. And I've been to several workshops where they say that that is used in advertising, like Tatiana said. And also, I remember when I was like young, back in the 80s, all that rock music that you were supposed to, like, to play backward and it would give you a message. Have you ever heard of that?
Yeah.
Oh, I went to a workshop that spoke extensively about that. I'm not going to get into that now. But how would that work in advertising? Well, let me ask you a question. I mean, I'm sure that most of you go to the mall or have gone to the mall with your mom. And sometimes you go to the mall because you want to. But sometimes you go to the mall and you really didn't want to, mom's dragging you. Have you ever been to the mall when you were not really interested in buying anything? And once you stepped inside, you were itching to buy something. Has that ever happened to you? You had no plan. You didn't want to, you were not really thinking of buying anything, but once you got inside, like something snapped inside your mind and your brain, and you're like, I got to buy something. Anyone?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know that when you go into a mall, they have like music, right?
Yeah.
They have like ambient music. It's like, okay, you know that when you go to a doctor's office or you go to an elevator, they also have music. All that music is made by the same company, the same corporation, the Muzak Corporation. That Muzak is in Germany. And what I heard in one of the workshops, I don't know if that is true or not, but they were playing some of that mall music that is in the background, and then they were like looking at different channels inside the different tracks inside the different channels inside that track, and what they found was one of the channels that only registered in the subliminal level of your brain. And you know what it was saying? It was a voice that was saying, buy, 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 buy. Did that creep you out?
A little.
Is that not creepy?
Yeah.
That they hide something like that to manipulate you? Well, that's what they told me in the workshop, right? So that's how that would work. And also another technique is power in groups, which is sociological. You know, you succumb to something called peer pressure, right? That's the power that the group has over the individual. There are also coercive techniques, some of which are highly controversial and have not been proven to be effective scientifically, like brainwashing. But I believe in brainwashing. I mean, look at what happened in the Capitol building in January 6th. I have no doubt in my mind that that was the result of brainwashing. You also have coercive persuasion. When someone tells you, if you don't do this, this is going to happen, you're being coerced. Mind control and torture is the most famous coercive technique, right? Now, the elements of persuasion are several, and they include, when you read, you're going to be seeing this, they include the author's purpose. And an author's purpose is his or her reason for writing. Remember that one of the reasons is to persuade. And when you're writing a persuasion, the writer might be trying to convince you to think about something particular. You're going to be seeing that in the selection that you will be reading beginning next week. It doesn't need to be the primary goal. It could be a secondary goal, but maybe you'll read about someone trying to have you adopt a certain idea or course of action. When you're also reading, you have to be aware of the author's argument. a writer tried to persuade you to accept his or her argument. And an argument is your main point of view. Like, Mom, can I go to the party? What's your argument? How many of you have ever asked your parents to let you go to a party? Anyone? I don't know. Most teenagers like going to parties, and I don't know, throughout my entire life, they always try to convince dad and mom, and they come up with an argument. What could be an argument? Well, it's good for me to, socialize with people, or I'm growing up, and you have to trust me. Let me go. All those kind of things, right? Can be arguments. And arguments can be very simple, and arguments can be very complex. When we have an argument, the argument, remember, is not a fight. The argument is your main point of view. You can argue in favor of something and support of something. When you argue in support of something, you call that a pro-argument. And when you argue against something, that is called a con-argument. And you read, and you have to be also in the outlook for the appeals to persuasion, because writers are going to either appeal to reason or appeal to your emotions, as we said. And that is something that you need to recognize, especially when you're reading an argument, guys. Like, is this guy going for my head, or is this guy going for my heart? Okay? Or is he doing both? Because there's no rule that says that you cannot do both. But remember that an appeal to reason will always be more valid, because it is based on, it's supposed to be based on logic and reasoning. Okay, so here's the assessment, 5 questions that need to be completed and uploaded to the LMS. Okay, do you have any question, guys?
No.
No question? Okay.